Psalm 116, this would correspond to the cup of salvation, the third cup in the meal. It begins with a declaration, I love Yahweh. This is only the second time that this phrase occurs in the Psalms. The other was in Psalm 18. Another common theme in this psalm is I will call, calling on the name of the Lord. It occurs 3 times. And we can call on God's name because of his nature. He is righteous, and he is merciful and gracious. And he is the one who saves. And here we have stated the theme, if you will, of Book 5. Hallelujah, God saves. Book 5 will highlight the many times and ways that God saves his people. In Psalm 116, I connect then with the cup of salvation. This is the cup after the meal with which Jesus identified himself. So when the psalmist here prays for salvation, understand that Jesus prayed this psalm in the hours before his arrest and crucifixion, and we can pray this psalm even as we think about our own mortality. That's where we move to in the next stanza. Return, O my soul, to your rest, for the Lord has dealt bountifully with you. In other words, he's saying, relax, rest, trust. For you have delivered my soul from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling. I'll walk before Yahweh in the land of the living. What a wonderful portrayal of God's faithfulness and the psalmist's confidence. I believed even when I spoke, or therefore I spoke, I am greatly afflicted. This is quoted in 2 Corinthians by Paul as a statement of trust. So I trusted, while at the same time saying, I'm greatly afflicted, I'm in trouble, I'm in pain, I'm suffering, but nevertheless I trust. What shall I render to the Lord for all his benefits? Though the response to God's salvation is to worship, is to say, what can I do for God? And here's what I'll do. I'll lift up the cup of salvation. Of course, I'm saying this song connects with that cup in the Passover meal. And I will call on the name of the Lord. I'll trust in him, and I will pay my vows to the Lord in the presence of all my people. So I will publicly acknowledge him and carry out my promises to him. This phrase, verses 13 and 14, will occur again in verses 17 and 18 in a very similar fashion. This phrase in verse 15 is interesting. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. That may seem counterintuitive. Why would God be happy at the death of his saints? An alternate translation is carefully watched over, that God is present. God is watching over even in our death. That fits very well. And he concludes again with a hallelujah. Remember that this is the psalm that Jesus prayed with his disciples as he faced his imminent crucifixion. And that also brings some insight into verse 15. The death of Jesus, of course, was horrific, unfathomable in its pain and its implications, and yet at the same time, paradoxically, quite precious because it means our salvation.